Hi everyone, my name is Ernest and I'm a product manager by day and a general purpose product geek by night. Today I'm going to share a review of watch rolls from a company called Hub City Vintage. In short, these products are a great choice for watch enthusiasts in need of a well-made, well-priced solution for storing and transporting watches. And even if you're not a watch fan yourself, these products would make a great gift for the watch lover in your life. On my 4-point recommendation scale, I give the whole family of Hub City Vintage watch rolls a rating of highly recommend. Okay, so that's my quick take. In the rest of this video, I'll explain why I highly recommend HCV's family of watch rolls and what types of watch enthusiasts will appreciate them most. But first, let me give you a little background on the company itself. If you're a fan of vintage Seiko watches, there's a good chance you've already heard of Hub City Vintage, and in particular, its co-owner Seth Roberts. Seth is an avid watch historian, and you can hear his fantastic stories chronicling key moments and players in watch history on the Unwound podcast, which I'd highly recommend for anyone with an interest in watches. Based in South Carolina, Seth has very much inherited the Southern knack for storytelling, and I've learned a ton from his show, which is co-hosted by a well-known tech podcaster named Dan Benjamin. Dan does a great job serving as the audience surrogate on the podcast, helping to make the content more accessible for newbies to the watch world without watering it down so much that longtime watch nerds will be turned off. I'll include a link to the Unwound podcast in the YouTube description box. Definitely check it out if you have a chance. In addition to his deep historical knowledge, Seth is also an expert watchsmith with a particular focus on servicing and restoring vintage Seiko timepieces. In fact, this absolutely gorgeous Seiko 6105-8110 diver, known colloquially in the watch community as the Willard, was found and restored by Seth. He listed it for sale on the Hub City Vintage website this past Christmas Day, and I was lucky enough to snatch it up. If there's interest, I can do a separate video specifically about this stunner. Please let me know what you think in the comments. So, Hub City Vintage services and sells vintage timepieces. But more recently, they've also added a line of watch rolls, which is what we're talking about today. The rolls are the brainchild of Seth's wife and business partner Caitlin, who hand makes each and every one of these. What I've got here is their original 5-slot watch roll, and I liked it so much that I went ahead and purchased their new Luxe Edition 5-slot watch roll, as well as the Luxe Edition 2-slot watch roll. Note that they also offer a 3-slot roll in both original and Luxe editions, but I didn't order one of those. At this point, some of you might be asking, why would anyone need a watch roll? In a nutshell, watch rolls are intended to provide a safe, convenient way to travel with multiple watches. Why might you need, or rather want, to travel with multiple watches? Well, one reason could be that you're going on a long trip and love watches so much that you can't bear the idea of wearing just one for the duration. That might sound crazy if you're not a watch enthusiast, but as Joyce Carol Oates so eloquently wrote, one man's insanity is another man's genius. Or, as the great Homer put it,
stupider like a fox!
Perhaps a more practical reason you might need to travel with multiple watches is that your trip will involve sporting activities such as running or swimming, as well as more formal activities like business meetings or dinners, and you want to bring along timepieces appropriate for each of those activities. Whatever the reason, a watch is not the sort of thing you want to leave floating in your luggage, where it could easily get dinged or scratched. If you're like me and keep all the original packaging that comes with your watches, you could transport them that way. But given how enormous watch packaging has become, that's probably not a good use of your limited luggage space. In addition, if you're traveling internationally, transporting watches in their original packaging might lead customs agents to assume that you've purchased your watches while abroad, and they could force you to pay a hefty duty to keep them. This is where watch rolls come in. They're light, don't take up a lot of space, and enable you to easily transport multiple watches while keeping them safe from damage. The basic architecture of a watch roll is pretty straightforward. First, you have a pliable sheet of material that serves as the outer protective layer. Then, on the inner side, you have a series of pockets that you can slide watches into, along with a flap to keep your straps or bracelets from rubbing against one another when the outer layer is rolled up. And finally, you have some form of closure that keeps the roll secured so that your watches don't slide out in transit. There are hard-sided watch cases and watch tubes as well, but soft-sided watch rolls are characterized by these three simple ingredients. Where the variation comes in is in the number of watches a roll will hold, the materials it's made from, the nature of its closure system, etc. In the case of the original Hub City Vintage watch roll, as noted earlier, it comes in versions that will hold 2, 3, and up to 5 watches. Both the 3 and 5 watch configurations also include a separate strap pocket, as well as a narrow pocket size to hold a spring bar tool. Two very thoughtful additions for watch fans. All configurations are made of a heavy-duty duck cloth, which is a form of durable, tightly woven cotton canvas. It's not inherently water resistant, but a watch roll is meant to be carried within another bag, so water resistance is not a typical feature. If water resistance is something that you need, a nice thing about the Hub City Vintage watch roll's canvas base is that you can easily and inexpensively treat it with a third-party fabric wax, such as otter wax, to make it highly water resistant. I'll show you an example of this later in the review, and I'll include a link to otter wax in the description box in case you want to go this route. The inner side of the roll is lined with a softer cotton fabric, which is important because this is the part of the roll that will come into contact with your watches. As you can see here, the color of the inner lining contrasts with that of the outer duck canvas. I spec'd my 5-slot watch roll with a gold outer and a navy inner, and I really like the rugged, almost tool belt-like look you get from this combo. But lighter color options are available as well, so see hubcityvintage.com for the full range of available outer and inner color combinations. The Hub City Vintage website doesn't specify the maximum case size supported by the watch roll, but I was able to fit my ginormous 47.5mm diameter, 15mm thick Seiko SUN 065 kinetic dive watch into 3 of the slots of my 5-slot watch roll. The more typically sized Seiko SKX 009, which measures approximately 42mm in diameter and 13mm thick, fit into all 5 slots, as did my 44mm diameter 6105 8110. Given that the Hub City Vintage watch roll is a handmade product, I think a degree of variability in slot width is acceptable. Here, I'm stressing the 5-slot watch roll as far as I can push it based on the pieces I have in my collection. In addition to the aforementioned SUN 065 and SKX 009, I've got the slots filled with another 47.5mm diameter SUN kinetic, yes, I like the watch, my 44mm diameter 6105 8110, and a 43.5mm diameter model from Seiko's Recraft line. Now I'll add a couple of straps and a spring bar tool for good measure. And I'm still able to roll it all up and secure the closure. That's over 1.5 pounds of watch in this one roll, which is way more than I'd ever take with me on a trip. But this gives you a sense for the max carrying capacity of the Hub City Vintage 5-slot watch roll. Here it is with a more realistic mix of tool, casual, and dress watch options. And you can see how compactly it rolls up. With regard to the closure, as I revealed in the previous shot, it's a wonderfully simple leather cord that's securely stitched into the left edge of the roll. The cord itself is available in 2 different color leathers, tan as shown here, and chocolate, or in a brown nylon paracord material. As much as I like the look and feel of the leather cord, if I were to order the Hub City Vintage watch roll again, I'd go for the paracord option, because paracord is just completely bomb-proof and would give me one less thing to have to worry about as a potential point of failure. But this is ultimately just a matter of personal preference. Speaking of which, aside from the Hub City Vintage brand, what most attracted me to their watch rolls was the fact that they're available in fully leather-free and fully natural fiber configurations, which is quite rare. There are a number of very nice canvas-based watch rolls on the market today, but most feature leather or synthetic leather linings or trims. I know I'm being a bit of a hypocrite here in that I'm still willing to wear leather watch straps, but I'm making an effort to seek out more products that are animal-free, and whether it was intentional or not, I'm really glad Hub City Vintage offers non-leather and non-synthetic options that look good, work great, and are all handmade in the US. Now, just a quick point of clarification. The material used for the paracord closure option is nylon-based, so while that configuration would be 100% vegan, it would not be 100% free of synthetic fibers. But given that the cord makes up so little of the total material used in the product, I'm okay with that. It would be great, though, if Hub City Vintage were to offer a fully animal-free, fully natural fiber option down the road, perhaps by using a cotton canvas or hemp-based cord. That'd be pretty cool, I think. Okay, getting down to the nitty-gritty. The original Hub City Vintage 5-slot watch roll retails for $35 US, which I think is a tremendous value given the quality of its materials and construction, and the fact that it's handmade in the US. The 3-slot configuration comes in at $30 US and the 2-slotter at $20 US. So, to summarize, the Hub City Vintage 5-slot watch roll offers lots of pros. It features high-quality materials and construction. It can accommodate a wide range of case sizes, up to at least 48 millimeters in diameter. The 5 and 3-slot configurations include separate slots for straps and a spring bar tool. It's made entirely of natural fibers and, when spec'd with the paracord closure option, is a 100% animal-free product. It offers great value for price, and it's handmade in the USA. As for cons, I really only encountered one, which is that the slots are not entirely consistent in width. Still, I was able to fit my 44mm diameter 6105-8110 in even the narrowest slot, and I think some degree of variability is to be expected in a handmade product. Okay, so that's the Hub City Vintage 5-slot watch roll, which, as noted earlier, gets an overall rating of highly recommended. Now let's move on to the Luxe Edition models, starting with the Luxe Edition 5-slot watch roll. In almost every way, the Luxe Edition models are identical to their original counterparts. The one thing that sets them apart is the lining material, which is upgraded to this beautiful herringbone flannel that's perceptibly softer to the touch than the lining in the original watch roll. As noted on the Hub City Vintage website, the Luxe Edition is designed for collectors and enthusiasts with precious metal or delicately finished watches. In my case, I don't own any precious metal watches and don't plan to in the future, but I still appreciate the beautiful look and feel of this cotton flannel material. In my opinion, the upcharge for the Luxe Edition is quite reasonable. The 5-slot watch roll escalates from $35 US for the original to $45 for the Luxe Edition. And this same $10 upcharge applies to the 3-slot configuration, which escalates from $30 for the original to $40 for the Luxe Edition. I should note too that the herringbone lining is available in 3 colors. I chose a purple color that they call wine, matched with a black outer canvas, and I really like the combo. The deep purple of the herringbone flannel somehow manages to make every one of my watches look even better. And as you can see here, I selected the chocolate leather cord closure to go with it. See hubcityvintage.com for all of the available color combinations. The last thing I'll show you is the Luxe Edition 2-slot watch roll, which features a design that's fairly distinct from the 3 and 5-slot configurations. Instead of a flat sheet that you roll up, you can think of the 2-slot watch roll as being more like a wallet that you fold closed. The protective fold-over panel is pre-stitched into place, and to maximize space efficiency, the slots are set on opposing sides so that your watch heads aren't stacked up against one another. Here's what I mean. I'll slide a watch into the right slot, and then a second watch into the left slot. So in the right slot, the watch head is up here, and in the left, it's down here. This enables me to carry 2 very thick watches in a profile that's not much thicker than just one of them would take up. A very clever design. And as you just saw, I could easily fit my very large and thick Seiko SUNs into each slot. My guess is that you wouldn't have a problem getting 2 50mm diameter watches into this thing. The one trade-off you make for this svelte packaging is that the 2-slot watch roll does not include the additional strap and spring bar tool slots that you get in the 3 and 5-slot configurations. But this is why it's great that Hub City Vintage offers 3 distinct models. If you need minimum size, get the 2-slot roll. If you need maximum carrying capacity, get the 5-slot roll. And if your needs fall somewhere in between, get the 3-slot roll. And remember too that you don't need to fill every slot in your roll with a watch. For example, with the 2-slot roll, you could use 1 slot for a watch, and then the other for extra straps and a spring bar tool. Since you'd be wearing a watch as well, this means you'd have 2 watches and additional straps to help transition from sporty to dressy occasions. One last thing. If you've been watching carefully, you may have noticed that the outer canvas of my 2-slot watch roll looks a bit different from the outer of my original 5-slot roll. That's because I went ahead and treated my 2-slot roll with otter wax to make it water resistant. If you've ever seen a wax canvas jacket, you'll recognize the effect otter wax has on the look and feel of canvas. I'll drip a bit of water onto each to show you the difference. As you can see, it's pretty significant. So this is a nice, inexpensive way to add water resistance to your Hub City Vintage watch roll, if that's a feature you think you'll need. You'll find a link to otter wax in the description box below. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the Hub City Vintage 2-slot watch roll is available in original and Luxe editions. The original retails for $20 US and the Luxe edition for $35 US. What I'm showing you here is the Luxe edition with the outer canvas in gold and the inner herringbone flannel lining in a color called green flock. The main reason I chose green flock for the lining is that it reminded me of the old PDX airport carpet that us Portlanders knew and loved. Given that the only change in the Luxe editions is the lining material, and that the associated upcharge seems entirely reasonable when you consider the perceptible upgrade in look and feel that comes with the herringbone flannel lining, my rating for the Luxe edition watch rolls remains highly recommended. So that's a look at the family of original and Luxe edition watch rolls from Hub City Vintage. As I hope you've gathered by now, I like them a lot. Not just for traveling with my watches, but also for storing them on a daily basis. I keep the Luxe edition on my nightstand with my dressier pieces, and the original on my dresser with my tool watches. It's a nice, space-efficient way to keep the watches I wear most often organized and safe from incidental damage, and I can quickly roll them up and tuck them away when necessary. If you've considered a watch case or roll, but found the available options too frou-frou or expensive, you should absolutely take a look at the family of Hub City Vintage watch rolls. Not only will you get a great product at a great price, you'll be supporting a company making products in the US and run by people who love watches as much as we do. If, on the other hand, you really like leather goods or are in search of something more overtly premium, the Hub City Vintage family of watch rolls probably aren't for you. Alright, I hope that was helpful. If you still have questions after watching this, please post them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. Otherwise, join me at Kicksology.net or on Instagram at Kicksology for periodic reviews of other things you might enjoy. Thanks for watching.